I just think I appreciate that song anew, having heard your arrangement, and very nice, beautiful. And we do need to grow up. Denise reminds me of that all the time. It's time to grow up. And it's interesting to notice how childlike we can be at times about wanting what we want. You know, we want what we want. Can I get it? You know, why can't I get it? And when we don't get it, we can be like a child, you know, just sort of stomping our feet and, you know, just railing against circumstances with not the highest of consciousness. And so I was thinking, you know, we quite casually and readily say Merry Christmas this time of year, or Happy Holidays, either one. They both involve the same affirmation, which is merry and happy. And for some people, those words land with such receptivity, and there's just a complete resonance with, yes, love and happiness and joy. And then there's a whole other experience which feels like that experience of joy and happiness is not here. It's not here. It's not present. And the way you and I are wired is that we tend to think that merry feeling that we all want. Of course, we all want to be happy. Is anyone here doesn't want to be happy? Everyone in the room is in the room with that. Okay. So we all want to be happy, and the tendency for us to not be happy feels like there's something missing in our experience, or something missing in our life. That, you know, we all could make our, you know, not so grown up Christmas list in which we would say all the things and the people that should be different in order for us to be happy, right? We know that. And yet that doesn't come out of our deepest, truest nature. It comes really out of the conditioning that you and I all grew up with. And so I wanted to share a few words here from Wordsworth. William, he said this. This is sort of this journey that you and I take, which sometimes is the journey of losing this sense of joy that we have. He said, our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar. Not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. Heaven lies about us in our infancy. This is this notion that when we come into the world, and we know this when we see small children, that they have this natural, trusting, vulnerable openness. They don't have attitudes. Attitudes come later. We know that. The terrific twos and all of that, right? But babies and toddlers, they just have this, they're just present to whatever's going on, and they're responding to the environment, and they don't really have a sense of what you and I have as we become conditioned. Whereas we grow, we begin to, this openness begins to contract. We begin to take this infinite awareness of being one with all of life, and we begin to contract it as we are protecting ourselves from the challenges of the human life. And if we're hurt or we're protecting ourselves. So we take this infinite being that we are, and we gradually begin to contract until and then we embody that, and then we hold that as an identity that this is who I am. We went from I'm a child of the universe, which without even a word of that, but just the sense of that infinite, boundless, eternal nature of life. And we begin to construct this smaller and smaller sense of self that we then feel is just here. It's important for us to know that, because if we're seeking happiness, then we need to seek it in a way that's truly functional, that's truly representative of how we got contracted in the first place. Otherwise, we will stay in the same illusion that got us contracted in the first place and believe that our happiness and our joy and our well-being is going to have to do with situations and circumstances being shifted around in order for us to feel okay. So that we could be like, for a moment, we could just like open ourselves up and trust this moment. But the truth of us is that we already have this deep, abiding sense of life. We can trust in life. We have always trusted in life at some level of our being, but we have closed it down. We have brought it in order to take care of ourselves. But we can reverse this process, and this is what I was noticing this week, was I was sort of under a cloud. Anyone be under a cloud, a little cloud of sadness and depression? And it's just not something that I have very often, but it was not coming at a good time, you know? It shouldn't be coming during the holidays, right? Could we wait to some other time, like, you know, maybe April 15th, when I have a good reason to be sad or feeling limited? But no, it was coming right on the heels, and we're going right into the, you know, to the candlelight services and today's and everything. And I'm like, this is not, I don't want this. But what I also noticed is that resisting what I'm experiencing, that doesn't work very well either. Do you know that? And so I was just sort of trying to be with it. And of course, I was trying to look at all the reasons, you know, how we do. Well, I'm feeling this way because of this, and I'm feeling that, you know, and that's, you know, there's a reason that comes in handy, but it isn't the ultimate. The ultimate is finding out and identifying and calling out the Grinch that stole Christmas. And I found out it was me. The mystery was solved. And what that was I was taking these situations and these circumstances in my life and interpreting them in a particular way, that's pretty human, and we have to kind of make allowances that we do have opinions and preferences. But then I was taking them on like a big, heavy weight. Do you know this one? Instead of there being challenges, they're like my challenges. You feel, you know, that heaviness. And that situation, I am responsible for that, you know, or I have to fix that. Or that person is not happy. Oh, maybe I did something wrong, you know. And we can just burden ourselves, not because we have problems, but because we collapse all those problems and take them on as taking them personal, making ourselves this very limited, fragile, vulnerable self that needs all these things in order to be okay. We made that person. God didn't. We are made of love and peace and joy. All these things that we claim, that's who we are. And when I become identified with the challenges in my life, and I feel that they're my challenges and my problems to solve and my burden to bear, it's hard to have a happy day. Joy is elusive. So there is this nuanced way of approaching this path to happiness. It isn't the New Age happy, happy, joy, joy, Pollyannish, gloss over approach, where you just say, in pretty much words of denial, well, it's all good, you know. And somehow you're just going blindly through life, ignoring the challenges that you have. That would be the one extreme on the positive side. The other side is what I just described, which is to take it all on and feel like if it's to happen, it's up to you. Has anyone ever, you know, felt that way? And maybe even this time of year more than ever. There's these expectations that seem to be heightened this time of year. There's expectations of how you're supposed to show up and what you're supposed to do and where you're supposed to go and the parties you're supposed to go to and the gifts you're supposed to buy and share and all these things that sort of live out of this celebration of this time of year, which can take us out of that intrinsic sense of being and joy and peace and love and put us into a place where we feel like we've got to be doing something in order to be okay. But the spiritual masters have always said, your well-being is already established. It's already you. It's already what you are. And this is what we need to remember to begin to let ourselves off the hook. Not to be irresponsible, but not to take on the weight of the world and all of the problems in the world. Denise and I oftentimes we sit on the couch in the morning, have a coffee, and we talk about things, and that's really good. But sometimes we get into the politics, of the world. And, it's great that we can get all this information and we can be, immediately informed of what's happening in the world. But there's definitely a dark side to all that information and its incessant flow and the volume and the rapidity in which it can land upon our consciousness and our psyche. That it requires us to be good stewards of our minds and our hearts. And again, it doesn't mean, okay, now I'm going to shut it off. I'm not going to watch the news or watch anything on the internet anymore. I'm going to live in this bubble of ignorance. It's not saying that. It's just saying, notice how the more you let in, the more you have to be aware that may be conditioning your consciousness along the lines of that who you have not come here to be. And that's what we're here. This is where we get to discern, because we have the ability to choose. To notice how we are in reaction to some things, and to the extent that we can stay clear and keep our heads above the clouds, to keep our heads above the sense of burden, the sense of responsibility, the sense of guilt, the sense of shame, all these things which defeat our spiritual perfection, our spiritual love and peace and joy. All of those things are choices that you and I get to make. And the more that I can open myself up, and this, I think, if you listen to all of the great teachers, they're all talking about what it is that we're looking for is not apart from this moment, no matter what this moment looks like. This is the crazy, but this is the paradigm-breaking news for all of us, is that what we're seeking is already here. And Jesus, said, it's not 4 more months and then comes the harvest. The fields are already ripe. And he was talking to people that had a whole laundry list of things that were wrong in the world, in their world. And that whole idea that we live in expectation, that life is supposed to show up a particular way, all of that sort of like sabotages the recognition of the fullness and the wholeness that already is here and now. And that is the mind-blowing truth. And if we don't get it, then we will consistently be seeking but not finding. And seeking but not finding is the sure way to sadness and depression. There's something about calling off the search that allows us to come right here in this moment. If you right now, let's do this. Let's just close our eyes for a moment. Close your eyes and just allow your mind to be quiet, if you can, and giving up all expectations. What is the state of mind when you are just present to whatever is? When you are not expecting anything, when you're not anticipating anything. This is how we come back home to our original nature. is when we begin to live without expectations, without predicting how life is supposed to be. Because don't we know that life does what life does? And the illusion of control, that we're managing the world and life and people, is the source of our suffering. It is the cause that keeps us from experiencing well-being, happiness, joy. It's not what happens. It's our reaction to what happens. And when our expectations are not frozen in our own preferences, then we have the ability to flow with life. We may not like it. We may prefer something else. And that's all human and that's all fine. But it's not a deal breaker. It's not something which diminishes us because we're not identified with situations, circumstances, and conditions. We're not identified with this contracted self. We're beginning to loosen that up. So I just invite you this week to, when you feel yourself getting tense, or you feel yourself getting contracted, you know that feeling, the angst. Maybe you feel it in your gut, or your heart, or your throat. It's just to say, I'm going to trust. I'm going to allow myself to be open, to allow this magnificent, intelligent God, universe, spirit, love, that is living my life, that is operating my body right now, that is running, keeping the stars and the sky and the planets and their orbits and all of the functions that are way beyond any individual control. I'm going to give sway to that. I'm going to allow that to be. Because that's what I am. Because I am nothing less than one with that infinite intelligence and love that trusts. And then I will take my lead, I will take my guidance from the intuition that comes from an open mind and an open heart. I allow myself to be guided by this presence, this power. And joy can be my compass. Joy can show me when I'm moving in the direction that is aligned with my true nature. And so can peace and love. Is that these are like, guiding lights that all of us are looking for. What should I do? Should I take this job or marry this person or go back to school? Those are all questions of the mind and the head, but the heart reveals your way. It says, this way is a path of more peace. This path will be more an expression of who you are. This path is more in alignment with your authentic self. This path is really the true and lasting unconditional love. This is how the universe is constantly guiding us. And we're stuck in our heads sometimes trying to figure it out. And when we're in our head, we're just riddled oftentimes with limits and fears. James Baraz, who wrote the book Awakening Joy, said, the secret to awakening joy is simply being present with whatever part of life we're tasting now. To be present to whatever part of life we're tasting now. This is the secret of joy. We oftentimes are trained in our Western minds to go after things that we want, right? I mean, that's the way to success. You figure out what you want, you go after it. But it doesn't work particularly well, or if at all, in the spiritual gifts that we're looking for. When we're looking for joy, the last thing you want to do is chase after it. If you're looking for love, don't go looking for it. When you're seeking peace, don't seek peace. Why not? Why? Because you have it already. And if you're out looking, what's the message that you send to your mind and your heart? That I must not have it. So the harder we look, the harder we search, the more intense, like, I'm going to find love this year, by God, you know? I'm going to get happy this year. I'm going to find it. The mind, the ego just goes, oh, good, I can sink my teeth into that, because that's the part of you that's never happy. Never enough love, never enough joy. It's always, way down on the meter. So if you give it that job, it will have you chasing your tail all over creation to find this ever elusive experience. So when you catch yourself, which I do sometimes, or someone catches you, then you go, yeah, wait a minute. Why am I so bent on this situation having to be this way? Because I'm so convinced that it's going to make me happy or peaceful or joyous or feel loved. And if that was true, what a ambivalent, capricious universe it would be. If your modicum, your share of love relied upon things going a certain way, what kind of a God would that be? Right? You don't want that kind of a God that gets up. We heard about that. It's the old testimony about that kind of God. That it was conditional. Gonna love you, gonna bless you if you do it this way, but if you do it that way, we're cutting that off. This is sort of a Grinchy God, right? Good news, bad day, good day. The very dualistic notion but we hold it to be infinite and eternal, which means that how could there ever be a limit on love? If God is infinite, how could there ever be a limit on love or peace or joy? How could there ever? Because if there was a limit, then all of a sudden infinity would no longer be the case. Even you and I walking around thinking that we're missing something, we're missing some love or some joy or something, we're arguing against the divine reality. And you know what they say when you argue against reality? You always, what? Lose and suffer. Now, I don't think we want to lose and suffer anymore. What if we got in league with this notion that it's here, that it's now? Just try it on. You don't have to believe it. In fact, I don't want you to believe anything I ever say. This is all about experience. It's all about try it on. Because we don't have dogma. We don't have doctrine. We don't tell you what to believe and what to think. We give you a premise. It's a hypothesis. We say, we believe that if you stay present and open, you will experience more love and joy in your life than you've ever experienced before. But you don't have to believe it. But you probably ought to try it and decide for yourself. There's plenty of other ways to worship, to experience the sacred. We just need to find the way that takes us home. The Unity of Santa Barbara is dedicated to authentic spiritual awakening. What that means is you are the decider. It's in the crucible of your own life experience that you decide whether these teachings are true only by your own validation, not because of many people believing them. So unity in some ways is kind of loosey-goosey. Some people don't like that. They want their guardrails put up. When they're bowling, they want those rails up. They don't want to throw a gutter ball. And they like that, and that's fine. But here in Unity, we trust the infinite intelligence and wisdom and love in each one to guide you. But if we're listening to a voice out here, if I'm listening to a voice out here, I'm not in touch with that love or that wisdom or that guidance. So it's a journey without distance, once again, to the home we never left. This is the Christmas story, really. We'll talk about it again more specifically tomorrow night, but it really is what Jesus said to Nicodemus. You must be born from above. And he's like, what? I was already born. I mean, how can I can't go back in my mother's womb again, so that doesn't make sense. Because he was stuck in this surface mind, the mind that judges by appearances. But Jesus was saying, no, you need to be reborn in the understanding of your true nature. You need to go inside to know yourself. And he said, there are going to be trials. There's going to be tribulations. Don't we know? But be of good cheer, because there is an overcoming power. And that overcoming power does not come from without. It comes from knowing who we are. It comes from raising up into the consciousness of our infinite connection with all of life, in which we are all powerful, all loving, all peaceful, all joyous. We are that. And this journey of a lifetime is about us waking up to that, birthing that understanding and bringing that into the world, to bring heaven, which is the consciousness, that high consciousness, to earth, which is into the expression through this vehicle that God has given us to be its hands and heart and voice on earth. So that's something to chew on for this week. As you dance with the Grinch, know that the whole universe is behind you in helping you to seek and to realize and to call off the search and to awaken to who you are. And the joy comes like a babbling brook up from that realization, no matter what. So, God bless you. Namaste.